So at the end of each one of my videos, I display a couple of screens. One of them, I thank everyone who supports me on Patreon, and I recognize the people who support me at the gold level and above on Patreon. And I also have this other screen where I have all the different social media URLs for the FreeDOS project. And I suddenly realized there's a typo on this, and it's been around for a while. The Twitter URL no longer has an underscore in it. And it would have been very easy to just update the image that I'm using for the video, but I thought, I do this screen in a way that's meant to sort of mimic DOS. Well, I'm doing all the videos in DOS. Why don't I just make a program in DOS to display these screens? And so that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to do a little programming here to create end screens for these videos. So let me go ahead and start up a new program. We'll call it thanks. So do fed thanks.c. And I'm going to use OpenWatcom for this, but right now I'm using the Fed editor, and Fed and OpenWatcom are both in the FreeDOS 1.3 distribution. So let's go ahead and start a new program here. So I know that I need to have sort of the standard things. If you've seen the other C programming videos, you know that every C program really starts with include standard io.h, and I also have include string.h. That's because I'm going to be looking at the lengths of strings using the strlen function, and I need to have string.h in there so I can use the strlen function. I'm also going to be displaying things directly to the screen and reading the keyboard in its raw state, and so I need to do include con.io, and that does the console input and output, and I also need to do include graph.h, and among other things that lets me set the colors that are on screen. And so I need to have a program, and so the program I'm going to have is int main, and that's just going to be a demo program to sort of have display names from Patreon and the social media URLs. And before I do anything else, I really need to set the video mode. And in other programming videos, I've kind of taken a shortcut here, and I just said set video mode at text C80. And what that does is sets the video mode to a text mode using colors and at an 80 column by 25 line screen. And that function will return the number of lines on the screen. And the reason I've been kind of cutting corners here, taking a shortcut, is because I haven't been checking that return value. So I really should set check the return value. So I'll do an if set video mode is 0, because that indicates that it wasn't able to set that video mode. So maybe I'm running this on a monochrome display or something like that. I need to print out the message error setting video mode, and I'm going to return back the operating system with an error code. And so that's really the better way that you should be displaying or setting the video mode. And so I'm going to just have a function here called thanks, and that's going to display the names of everyone on Patreon. And I probably need to also pause when I'm done with that. I'm going to write these two functions here in just a second, and then I can be done with the program. And then when I'm done, I need to set the video mode back to its default mode, and then I can return safely back to the operating system with return 0. So let's write these two functions, thanks and pause. Let's write the pause function first. That's a pretty easy one to do. So I'm just going to read the keyboard, wait for a single key press, and then exit out of the function. It's a pretty easy function to write. So I'm going to do a void function because I'm not returning any particular value, and then pause. And inside that function, I'm going to use the getch function. Now, this would normally be something you could just do, and if you aren't expecting any weird behavior, you could just use getch instead of pause. But why am I doing this? Really because pause is a wrapper. If you have an extended key press, so for example, one of the function keys, then that's an extended key. And if getch returns 0, it means you have an extended key, and you need to read get ch again, and that will return a second code that will mean the extended key on your keyboard. And so for that, I then need to say if get ch is 0, then I'm just going to go ahead and call get ch again, get ch, right? And that's all I'm doing there. Just I'm making sure that I have read everything that I need to read before I exit. This is really just a quick little wrapper around the get ch function. And that's why I still like to start with that one. It's a pretty easy one to write. So the thanks function, so I'll do a void function here because I don't need to return any data, called thanks. And for this, I'm going to thank everyone who supports me on Patreon. So I need to first create a list of patrons, and this will be a null terminated list of strings. And so normally you think about a string, and a string ends with a null character. That's the 0 character. Well, here I'm taking that sort of one step further. I'm going to say I need a list of strings. And how do I know in the program that the list of strings is done? Well, one way is I could, count up myself how many elements are in that array, and I could only count up to that number. But if I add a name or delete a name, I don't want to have to go back and recount the list. And so I'm just going to create a null terminated list of strings. I'm going to do that with care. And then normally I do star, but here I'm going to indicate the names themselves. So let's do care names, and then there's my array. So care pointer to an array is, and then the names that I have on here. So thanks to Matt, and thanks to Gustavo, and thanks to Mitchell, and Eric, and then adding myself here because I am donating time for my consulting company, and so that's Hallmentum. And then how do I know I've reached the end of the list? I'm going to insert the null string pointer null. And then that's the end of my list there. And so that's the end of my list. And then I've got, of course, I need to be able to iterate through that. And so I'll just create an integer variable called item in that list. So first I need to clear the screen. And let's do that with, we're going to set the background color. And I like to use blue normally as a background color. And you're seeing that here in my Fed editor. But I've done a little bit of experimenting before doing this video, and I found that for what I need to do, using black text on a gray background actually looks much better. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to set the color here to 7, and that is white, or sort of a low intensity white, basically a light gray. And then I'm going to clear the screen using the macro gclear screen. And so that clears the entire screen. Normally, you could also insert an option in there that would just clear a text window, and we'll do that in a little while, but this is how you're going to clear the entire screen. Of course, I'm writing this for Open Watcom, and so all these functions that I'm using to set the background color and text color and clearing the screen and things like that, these are all done through Open Watcom. The function names will be different if you're using the i16 GCC, using the libi86, or some other C compiler, but here I'm using Open Watcom. So I probably should print a title and a footer. And I know I'm going to do that again in another function, so I'm going to go ahead and just use another function called print title. And for that, I'm going to say for my title, I'm going to say, thanks for watching. And then I'm going to print a footer, and that's going to be the URL to our YouTube channel, which will be youtube.com/FreeDOS project. No underscore on that one. And then before I go any further, let's go ahead and write those two functions. So I've got a function up here called print title, which isn't returning any value, so I'm going to do a void function there. Print title, and then a character string. And I'm not going to modify it, so I'm going to do a const char and then pointer, and that is called title. And this is where I need to use the length of the string. So let's first of all, I'm going to put the title at the top of the screen. So I like to display a single line. So before I do that, I need to set the background color, set BK color. And that's going to be, I like to use this one for blue. We'll use blue for this one. This is blue for the background. And then I'm going to set the text window. And you always set this as row and then column. And they're in pairs because you need to find the upper left and the lower right of that text window. So I'm going to say 1, 1 all the way over to 180. And so you'll notice that that's going to be on just one line, the top line, from row 1, column 1 to row 1, column 80. And then we'll go ahead and clear the screen, but instead of doing the entire screen, I'm just going to do G window. And now once I've done that, I can set my text position. I'm going to set that on row 1 because it's only one line long. And then where do I want to put this? I want to center my text as best I can. So I'm going to start at column 40, and then I want to subtract half of the string's length. And that's why I needed to use string.h. And so I'm going to do strlen of the title divided by 2. And I'm doing division there, and so I don't need to put the strlen by 2 in its own set of parentheses, but I'm an old style programmer, and I kind of like to just make sure everything is happening in one spot. But just FYI, the order of precedence means that multiplication and division will happen before addition and subtraction, but there it is. I'm going to put that in parentheses anyway. And then I'm going to set text color, and I've got a blue background, and so I like to put white text on a blue background. So I'll do 7 here for my text color, and that'll be white. And then I'm going to out text the title text. And so this is a very simple function. All it's doing is setting the background color, defining a text window. That's just one line at the top of the screen, then clearing that little text window, and then setting the text position within that window, and then defining the text color and then printing out the text. That's a very simple function right there. I'm going to do basically the same thing when I do the footer. And so I'm going to actually start by copying this function and then pasting it. And so I can now change the name of this copy to be print footer. And here I'm going to change this to footer. And in my footer, I'm going to not use blue. I'm actually going to use cyan in this case. And so what's the color for cyan? The color number for cyan is 3. And I'm going to set my text window not to start on line 1, but in fact start on line 25 and then end on line 25. So it's just the bottom line of the screen now. I'm going to still clear the screen of just that text window. And then rather than centering the text, I'm actually going to just push it over to the right-hand side of the screen. So I'll do 80 minus the strlen of the footer string. And so that'll put my text over on the right-hand side of the screen. And what color do I want to display that in? Well, let's go ahead and put it in white. Now, white on a cyan background won't have a lot of contrast, but this is sort of the footer. It's sort of meant to sort of display in the background anyway. And so I'm going to leave this as white on cyan. Anyway, so now I've got my two functions here, print header and print footer. And I can go back to my thanks function, and I can now continue on from where I left off. So I had just called the functions print title and print footer. And once I've done that, I want to display some text. I want to display a little logo for the Patreon logo. And so for that, I'm going to display here Patreon logo. And I'd love to display the logo in like a little box. I've done a little experimenting on this. And what looks really good is if I can put a single letter inside a box. Jumping back real quick to what that end card looks like. So I'm going to just skip real quick past the normal Patreon card. We're going to look at the end card here. So you'll notice I've got the logo for Facebook and Twitter and Patreon in a little circle. Well, that's a pretty standard way to do it. I'm going to do it a little bit differently in plain text mode. And we're going to just put a single letter, an F, a T, or a P inside a little rectangle. We'll give it an extra line above and below the single letter, and we'll give it a column left and right around that single letter. So that way it's not just, its own little colored thing. It'll actually be in a little bit of a box. And so I'm going to do that by creating another function here called box. And so box. And I need to remember how I'm going to define this. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to say my upper left will be at 7 and 50. So I'm going to put this sort of in the 7th row down, and then not quite starting at the center of the screen, but just a little bit further to the right. So at column 50. So that's where I'm going to start it. And then I'm also going to pass it what color I want this box. I'm going to use this box function a couple of different times. I'm going to use it to create the Patreon logo, which I'm doing now. I'm going to also use it to make the Twitter logo and the Facebook logo. So I need to be able to define my colors here. So I'm going to define it as the background color and then the foreground color. So Patreon uses as a background color for its icon sort of a coral color. And so the best I can do with DOS colors is color 4, and that's red. And for the text inside that, for the icon, I'm going to do color 15, which is bright white. And then I'm going to pass it a single letter P. Now you might wonder, if I'm passing a single letter, why am I giving it inside a string with the double quotes? Well, it's because I'm going to reuse this function later when I do something else. So when I do the URL for the FreeDOS website, I want to be able to pass it a full string. And so that's what I'm going to do there. I'm going to do it as just a string. And so that is the Patreon icon, and 4 means that it's a red background. And then we're going to do the Patreon text. Now I've been changing some colors here. So I don't really need to change these colors because the color's been set on the screen, but I'm going to go ahead and, just for safety anyway, I'm going to set my background color back to 7 and my set text color now to 0. And so 7, of course, is white and 0 is black. So I've got black text on a white background. And I want to also make sure my screen coordinates sort of make sense sort of to me as a programmer. So I'm actually going to set the entire screen coordinates again to be the full screen. Why am I doing this? Well, I've already, in the box function, which I'm just about to write, it's going to set its own screen coordinates for the text window. I did the same thing up there when I printed the title and the footer. So I want to make sure I'm resetting my screen coordinates. And I'm going to set this according to the full screen. And so for this, I'm going to set the text window back to 1.1 and then 2580. Now, before I get too lost here, let's go up and write a box function. And so I'm going to do that up here. I'm going to create a box function. So this is not going to return a value, so it's going to be a void function called box. And the way that I called this is I had the starting row, then column. So in other words, it's the top of the box and then the left of the box. And then I've got the background color and then the foreground color. And then I've got a string, which I'm not going to modify, so I can make it a const, and then char text. That's the text that's going to go inside my box. So let's go ahead and draw a box with my string in it. And so let's first set the background color, set BK color to the background. And we go ahead and set the text window in this case to be starting at the top and then the left. And then how far down does it need to go? Well, I wanted to leave a blank line above and below this icon, in this case, considering the Patreon logo. And so that means this is going to need to be 3 lines long. Well, the way that you're thinking about it, the first line and then the next line and the line after that. So that means at top +2, that's the bottom of the text window that I want to draw. And then how far does it need to go on the right? Well, it needs to be left, and I need to leave enough room for the string. And so I'm going to do strlen of my text. And then I also want to leave an extra column, left and right. And so I need to add another 1 column there. And so that gives me left plus strlen text plus 1 will be the correct width for my box. And then now I can go ahead and clear the screen inside that window. So G window. And now I can set my text position inside that window. And I want to put that not at 1, 1, but I want to put this on the second line and the second column. That leaves me a blank line on top and a blank column on the left. So this is starting at, instead of 1, 1, 2, 2. And now I can set my text color to be the foreground color that I passed into my function. And then I'm going to use out text to display that text. So just out text. And so now I've written a little function here that will just draw a box with whatever string I put in it. Now, if I'm putting a single character, then my string text will just be a single character long. And so everything should look correct. And so let's go down here to where I was writing my function. And after I had called box, then I went and set the background color back to 7, which is white, and then the text color back to 0, which is black. And then I define the text window to be the entire screen. And that means that all of my screen coordinates will look correct. And I'm not gonna count for like the top line and things like that. I just want everything to look correct. And so now that I've done that, I can now put a set text position at, now I want this to be lined up with my P that I have in the box. And so if the box started at line 8, then the text is in that box is going to be starting on line, sorry, if the box starts at line 7, then the text is going to start on line 8. So that means that this text I'm going to put for the URL needs to be on line 8. And then where do I want it to be? Well, it's going to start at column 50, because that's what I have there for the box. And then if you do the mental math, I need to make sure that I'm leaving enough room for the box, and I would leave another blank empty column after the box. So I'm not mushing text right up next to the icon. And that means I need to start this at column 54. And now I can use out text to display my URL for Patreon, patreon.com/FreeDOS. That's the URL for the our Patreon. And so that's our Patreon URL. And then I should say thank you to, so thanks to my gold and above patrons. And for that, I now need to display some text. So I'm going to, normally I just had this displayed in that end card, the end screen in our videos, but now I'm going to need to display some text. And so I'm going to go ahead and set the text position to be at line 3. Now I put my icon for Patreon on the right-hand side of the screen. So this I'm going to put on the left-hand side of the screen, all the list of the names. And so I'm going to start on line 3. And that means that the top line, line 1, has my header on it. And then I'm going to leave a blank line. And then I'm going to start my text at line 3 and then column 2. That means that I'm not mashing my text all the way on the left-hand side of the screen. I'm leaving an extra column there so it looks a little bit nice. And then I'll say out text, special thanks to these. Let's actually list the levels here. So I've got gold supporters. And I need an extra line here. So we'll do another set text position, and we'll set this back to line 4, column 2. And then we'll continue my text, out text. And so it's not just gold supporters who get recognized in the videos, but it's also people who are at the sponsors level and at the gold sponsors level. And so that's my text that I put there. And now I need to display all of the names. And so if you remember, jumping up a little bit here, I've got that list of names that is terminated with a null pointer. And so I'm going to go back here to where I was after printing out that basically the header, and I'm going to now print out the list of names. And so for item starting at 0, that was that counter variable called item. And we'll start this at 0, and then as long as that entry in the names list, so names list, is not a null value, then I continue doing the loop. And then when the loop is done, it's going to increment item by 1. That's the item plus plus. And now I can set the text position to be, so where do I want this to be? I want to leave a little bit of room here. If my text position for that sponsors, gold sponsors, basically the second line of what I'll call the header, I want to leave a blank line there. It's line 5. And so that means that this needs to start on row 6. And then, 6 plus item. And then that needs to be at, let's move it in a little bit. Instead of starting at column 2, we'll start at column 5. And then I can do an out text on the entry that I just looked at. So an entry on names list. And so that now prints out some information, special thanks to these gold supporters, sponsors, and gold sponsors, and then prints out the list of names. And that should print out the list of names. And so down here, I have called the thanks function, and then I'm waiting for a key with the pause function, and then the program clears the screen and exits back to DOS. And so let's go ahead and save that program, and we'll do Watcom compiler and linker. And so we're not going to be so loud with the or verbose with the output. We'll do -q, which is quiet, and then thanks.c. Oh, and I have an error in there somewhere. Looks like line 40. I didn't, so I must have a typo in there somewhere. So we'll do fed thanks.c. And then where's line 40? Oh, yeah. I called it text. Oh, that looks correct. Did I not do something right? Oh yeah, right here, right above. So whenever gives you yeah, and this is line 40, so I was looking at the wrong line. And so right here, instead of title, I needed to have footer. So I just missed something when I did the copy paste. And now we'll recompile the program, and I missed something here. 106. Oh yeah, it looks like when I was doing something with that list. Yeah, it says, I said names list. I was talking and coding at the same time. So instead of list, it was item in that list, and then item down here. And I got it correct up there. So that was good. And so save and quit, and then we'll recompile the program. And I did one more here. Oh, because I'm not returning an error code for an error value for main. Oh, it looks like actually it's because I've got a missing closing paren here. And oh, because right up here I have double open curly brace, and so that is should be the last bug there. So we'll go ahead and compile one more time, and there we go. And now if I run thanks, you can see I've got a thank you screen that has thanks to all these gold supporters, sponsors, and gold sponsors, and lists all the names. And on the right hand side of the screen, I've got the icon for Patreon, sort of a red square with the letter P in it, and then it says patreon.com/FreeDOS. And it's got thanks for watching at the top, and it's got my little URL on the bottom right. Sort of harder to read, but it's sort of, we'll call it iced out in that case. So I said that I was using the box function once and I was going to do some other stuff. So this takes care of the recognizing everyone who supports me on Patreon. So now let's go ahead and modify this program, fed thanks.c. And let's go ahead and jump back down here. In addition to doing the thanks, we also need to list the social media. So we'll do social and then pause. And then it'll exit. So up here, we can now define another function called social. Now it doesn't return a value, so we'll do a void here called social. And social will do something similar to what we did up there with the thanks list. And so it'll set the background color to 7. Again, that's white. And then it's going to set the text color to 0, which, if you remember, is black. And then I'm going to clear the screen. So clear screen. And the entire screen will do this time. So G clear screen. And let's go ahead and display the title. So we'll do title and footer. And so I'm going to do print title, and it's going to be, let's say on the title, and let's use a different one. Let's actually for this one say, don't forget to like and subscribe. And then the footer, print footer, we'll do the same as we did before. So we'll do youtube.com/FreeDOS project. And now let's go ahead and display our social media icons. And the icons, so we need to kind of keep track of what our screen looks like. I've got a first line of the screen is being taken up by the title, and I want to leave a blank line underneath that, and then my icons should start. And so I'm going to use box again to define the Facebook. And that's going to be starting at row 3, column 2. And Facebook uses, we'll do a white F on a blue background. And so they're going to do that with our blue background is going to be 1, and the color will be 15. That's going to be a nice bright white. And then we'll put in a single F. And so that's the Facebook icon. And don't forget that 1 is the color blue. Oops. Color blue. And I'm going to just, let's do all the social media icons at once, and then we'll put the text up. And so we'll do box at 7.2 because the Facebook is going to be lines 3, 4, and 5. I want to have another blank line, that's line 6. And so the next icon needs to start on line 7. So 7.2. And then I'm going to use Twitter for this one. So Twitter uses sort of a light blue background for its color, which the closest I can come using DOS colors is color 3. And then we'll put that in bright white, so 15. And we'll use a lowercase t there. That'll indicate the Twitter icon. And remember that 3 is the color of, cyan. And then we'll do the Patreon icon. And so that was another box function. And if the Twitter icon is going from lines 7, 8, and 9, and I have another blank line there at 10, then the box for the Patreon logo will start at line 11, column 2, and we'll use, again, red for the background 4, and then 15 for that bright white, and that'll be a lowercase p. So that's my Patreon logo, and reminding ourselves that 4 is red. All right, so now I've got my title and my footer up. I've got my social media icons displayed. Now I need to set my text back and reset my screen coordinates so I can work with that. So we'll do our social media text here as a comment, social media text. And I'm going to set my background color, set BK color to be 7. That's a reminder, that's white. And I'll set my text color to be black. And now I need to reset my text window. So I'm going to set text window. And we'll do this all the way for the entire screen. So it'll be line 1, column 1, and then down to line 25, column 80. So that resets the screen coordinates for the entire screen. And now I can reset my text coordinates to be set text position. And now I need to put the different URLs for those icons that I had up above: Facebook, Twitter, and then Patreon. So my text position for the Facebook is going to be, if the box starts at line 3, then the middle of the box is going to be line 4. So set text position line 4. And the box for the Facebook icon is going to be columns 2, 3, and 4. And that means that column 5 is a blank one. I want to leave a blank column there. And that means that set text position is going to be at column 6. And so all of these are row and column references. And now I need to display the URL. So out text. And the URL is facebook.com /groups/FreeDOS. Oops, it's typing here. And so that is the Facebook URL. And now I can set the text position for the Twitter URL. And again, if the Twitter Twitter box icon starts at line 7, then this needs to be at line 8. And it's going to be lined up with the Facebook URL. So again, at column 6. Again, these are all row and column coordinates. And then I can do out text. And this was incorrect in the previous videos. And now I want to make sure I'm using the right one. So it's going to be twitter.com/FreeDOS project. No underscore on that one. So that's Twitter. And then set text position for the Patreon logo, and same as we were doing before, it's going to be at line 12 and column 6, and then do my out text of the Patreon logo, which is patreon.com/FreeDOS. And then I want to display we've got the URL for the FreeDOS website. And I previously had put that in sort of a white text in a black background because it looks like a nice DOS little window. And so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use the box function. And so we'll do the FreeDOS URL. And that will be using the box function. And I'm going to do the same trick I did with the Patreon logo for the thank you page. And I'm going to put this one on the right hand side of the screen. And so if you remember, the screen coordinates for that were starting at 7 and 50. That means it's not column 40, which is the middle of the screen, but just a bit further to the right, starting at column 50. I want this to be a black background, that's 0, and I want this to be a low intensity white foreground, that's 7. And then the URL is www.freedos.org. And that will complete my screen display. And if I didn't make any errors, I should be able to save and quit and then recompile. And I don't see any errors there. And so now I do thanks. And now I've got a screen with all of my sponsors on Patreon. And the next screen has, don't forget to like and subscribe, and the URLs for our different social media. And now we'll have room at the bottom for YouTube to put the different links to visit the different parts of our website and our channel. So I'll actually now use this for my end of the video. So thanks for watching this video, and thank you to everybody who supports me on Patreon. You really do make this channel happen. And some of you are sponsoring me at a higher level, and I will thank you again, especially here for that. So thank you very much. Don't forget to visit our website at freedos.org. Join us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and consider supporting me on Patreon. Thank you.